Hello, here I am, still rabbiting on. So, I left you at the end of the last video with suggesting that you might be able to break down your overarching argument into your three main points with an introduction and a conclusion. So, we'll all probably be doing the same things in the introduction where you define what your key terms have been. You're basically doing your kind of, step one process, making it clear which lens you're going to use and why, spelling out what argument, that conclusion that we're going to arrive at. Then my thesis statement kind of broke down into three key points. So my first point, paragraph 2, would be all about how it disrupts the discourse of history because it uses multiple narrative voices and most of them are black and female voices. Okay, so I would do a whole big paragraph on like narrative perspective, good quotes from characters like Seth, Beloved, Denver, but also drawing in this idea of debate and how there are male voices as well. My next paragraph then, so my second point but my third paragraph, would be about how this idea of like insistence is debatable. So I would say, yes, there is an insistence in the repetitive structure, and in Beloved, there seems to be a real need for this story to be told, and maybe even that kind of context of Morrison having to fill in those gaps that previously black women were forced into silence over, but how actually ex-slaves don't always insist on telling their experience. So then I would do a bit on those absences that we've talked a lot about in Beloved. So I would probably talk about how Seth deliberately doesn't tell Paul D what she did. I might talk about how long it takes us to get that escape from Sweet Home. I might talk about Sixo deliberately being silent, yeah, so absences and how actually these characters don't insist on telling their experience, those gaps in the story that Ella always knows to look out for people who are escaping from slavery. And then I would do my final point, so paragraph 4, on how actually it gives them a real strength to refuse to speak about their experience. Okay, so the fact that they don't owe that to anybody suggests that they're now free of it. And I could use the ending there and that talk of tomorrow and the fact that Seth eventually kind of recovers. Yeah. And then my conclusion would all be about Morrison's purpose. So whatever you're arguing, you will always be returning to why has the writer done that? Okay, so everybody in their conclusion should be saying Morrison's done this too. So I would be arguing that Morrison has done this to highlight that these slaves are independent individuals in a way that slavery never really recognized. Yeah, I think that's probably a useful argument for a lot of interpretations of Beloved. So this bit I think is very difficult, and it might be that you haven't arrived at kind of three separate ideas because you haven't done that thinking that often comes through writing. So if you get to step 3, where you've really unpacked the question, you've thought about which lens is going to be best, and you've thought about what you're probably going to argue, you've absolutely done your job. The structure is probably something that will evolve. Yeah, so it might be that you start writing this really good paragraph that you think is all about one thing, and then it becomes really huge and you have to separate it into 2 paragraphs. So if you're looking at this slide thinking, gosh, I don't know what 3 main points I'm going to make, then that's absolutely fine. What I do want to say though is with this 1500 word count, I wouldn't go for any more than 3 points. Okay, so if you're thinking about a 1500 word count, let's say in terms of what you're going to use for your introduction and your conclusion, let's say you're going to use, I don't know, 300, 400 words of that for that combined. That's not leaving you with many words at all, is it? So let's say you've got 1200 left. That's only going to give you 400 words a paragraph. And believe you me, the amount of details you guys write about and the amount of thought and nuance that you bring to a single quote, 400 words quickly gets eaten up when you've got to bring in your critical lens and quotes from other people. Okay, so in terms of word count, I'm going to edit this slide actually and put some word counts on for you. Think about 400 words a paragraph and see how you get on. So these 2 final slides are basically what I want you to use to plan. Okay, so you're going to spend today thinking about what your question is going to be, and that's as far as you're going to get. So you're going to do some wider reading. If you feel like you want to read what I've emailed to you from Morrison for a good quote, you can. If you've got a really good quote in your anthology that you think will work, you can. But basically, you're whittling it down to, right, my absolute best ideas are going to be based on this question or this quote. Then you're going to fill in these 2 slides on Friday's lesson. Okay, So you're going to go through the steps like I've asked you to do. You're going to find the debate in your question. So really pull it apart, zoom in on the words that you could debate. What important moments or quotes are you going to use from the novel? So really do that starting from the novel bit. Then you're going to do step 2, where you think about which lenses might work. So you might look at it from a feminist stance, from a narrative stance, from a Marxist stance, and really think about what would a Marxist say about this quote? What would a feminist say about this question? Then you're going to do step 2, kind of summary, right? And that's where you pick which lens is going to be the best one. Okay, that's where you do the agree and the disagree that you saw on my slide. So you look at all your ideas, you think about which one maybe has the most ideas or the best ideas, and you pick that lens. Okay, and you think, right, here's all the reasons that I would agree with this quote if I was being a feminist scholar or if I was being an eco-critical scholar, and here are all the reasons that I would disagree with it from that standpoint as well. And once you've done that, you'll hopefully be able to sum that up in your line of argument. Okay, so step 3 is your ultimately Morrison is blah blah blah, and basically how far do you agree with that question or with that statement. You should be using the words of your question a lot in step 3. Step 4 is in green because it's a challenge and you don't have to do it if you're not there yet. But what I've given you is basically what I think your introduction should probably include. So defining your key terms, spelling out which lens you're going to use and why, spelling out what you're going to be arguing, which you might not be able to do fully yet, but you should have a good idea. And then you should conclude with ultimately what Morrison's purpose is when she's using the motif of milk or when she's looking at motherhood, what you're trying to show us. And then your 3 main points that you're going to focus on in the middle. Okay. You might only have 2 main points at this point, which is absolutely fine because, as I say, you guys write in so much detail that I would put my house on the fact that it'll probably give rise to another one. Okay. One golden rule that I want to really stress with you guys before I let you loose on this is that you really, really, really need to learn to differentiate between the novel beloved by using italics and the character beloved, because you're not going to use italics. So when I've been reading all of your work, all of your essay plans, there's been a lot of slippage between are you talking about the novel or you're talking about the character. You need to be really, really clear. Okay, so every time you're talking about the whole novel, make sure you're putting it in italics. Okay, that's my advice. So all I really need from you at the end of Friday's lesson is this slide, this final one. So your question at the top, do you agree or disagree? Like what are going to be your kind of points of debate? What's going to be your line of argument? If you've got a plan in mind of the 3 things you're going to explore, great. If not, don't worry. Okay. What I need from you by the end of today is just what you think your question's going to be. And it just means that if you are going mildly or wildly off track and be like, that's dreadful, let me just steer you back on course. But as I say, I'm sending out emails today with basically telling you like what your best ideas were, like what I really want to see more from you on, what I really want to hear about. And what's really wonderful, guys, about all your work is just how different it is. Like, I know a lot of people feel like, oh God, I was going to say that, and no, they took my idea. But the things that you are recording in your notes at home are all so different and all so interesting. So I know that I sound sad and you might not believe it, but I am genuinely really looking forward to reading your NEAs. How pathetic. I need to get out more, but we are in lockdown. Just before I end this lesson, what I do want to speak to you about, now that I've got a whole 5 more minutes to play with, is that the Literature NEA, there's also a different avenue that you might be interested in. Okay, so what I've really guided you through is the essay form of coursework, but there is another option, which is more of a kind of creative response to what you've read. Okay. So I'll just explain a little bit about the creative response, but then I'll also explain why I haven't elaborated on that this time round. So the creative response is, if you do English language, it's almost kind of like the NEA that you'll do there. So you basically write something creatively in response to Beloved, and then you write a little commentary on why you created it and how that feeds into the ideas in the novel and the ideas in your particular lens. So for example, if you were interested in I don't know, like cultural value, for example, and we talked a lot about how this is a really esteemed novel and it gets a lot of respect from critics, you might then do something creative where you turn it into something that is more kind of pop culture. So you might write something that turns a certain scene into, I don't know, like a magazine article or something. So you might do like a really sensational tabloid depiction of Seth's murders, yeah? And then you would do a commentary and you would write about how your tabloid depiction of that murder is informed by not only like the critical lens of the anthology to do with ideas of like canonization and cultural value, but also how it's informed by ideas in the novel, say about how men view women, for example, or how history has been narrated by men and how history has traditionally depicted the black woman. Okay, so that is an option if you are really interested in it. It's also an option if you get going with your essay and it just doesn't really work. The reason that I haven't floated that idea with you is simply because of these really unprecedented times, which I'm sure we're all sick of hearing about, and just the idea that like it's a little bit trickier to navigate on your own. So I think because we are working at home without, face to face kind of teacher intervention, I think it's going to be easier if we all do the same thing and we all write an essay, because basically we've spent all of year 12 getting really good at writing essays, haven't we? So I'm confident that we can do that really well. And it means that that creative element is still an option when you get back to school and you start your coursework with Mr. Bland. So when you read Owen's poetry, for example, and you're really keen on doing a creative NEA, you've still got that option then. Okay. So if you're hearing this and thinking, oh my God, that sounds perfect for me, I would be so good at that. I've got a brilliant idea. I can't believe Dr. Williams is not letting me do a creative NEA on Beloved. Then please email me and just say as much. If you have a really good creative idea and you think you could do a class bit of work and get mint marks on it, then I'm really open to it. But as I say, I'm just trying to make it easier for everybody, including me, who has just recorded essentially an hour's worth of videos and created all these resources for you. So I'm trying to keep us all, on the same track, just so that we're all at the same stage, because we're so far apart. But yeah, if you've heard that and thought, nah, that's absolutely what I want to do, and I already know that I'm going to smash that, then I'm happy to hear your ideas on that. Okay, but as I say, don't feel like that option's been cut off to you, because A, I'm interested to hear from you if you feel like you could do Unbeloved, but B, you'll get the opportunity to do it with Mr. Bland on your coursework for Owen. Okay, so that's just because I don't want to have any secrets from you, and I don't want you to think that I'm, trying to pull the wool or anything. And if you want to look up, the documents on the AQA website, you'll be able to see that that is an option for you. So I didn't want you to feel like I was misleading you, but these are my reasons for possibly not sending you down that track at this point. Okay, so you know where I am if you need to email me. Good luck and enjoy. I'm so excited.